But first, time for the hot topic of the hour. Utah officials formally charged Charlie Kirk's alleged assassin yesterday with 7 counts, including aggravated murder, obstruction of justice, and witness tampering. The Utah County DA says these charges carry steep consequences.
Count 7, commission of a violent offense in the presence of a child, a Class A misdemeanor, for committing homicide knowing that children were present and may have seen or heard the murder and did so based on Charlie Kirk's political expression. I am filing a notice of intent to seek the death penalty. I do not take this decision lightly.
More evidence includes the suspect's DNA found on the trigger of the rifle used in the shooting. Prosecutors are also sharing text messages between him and his roommate, where he appears to confess. Watch this.
To be honest, I had hoped to keep this secret till I died of old age. I am sorry to involve you. Roommate, you weren't the one who did it, right? Robinson, I'm sorry. I had planned to grab my rifle from my drop point shortly after, but most of that side of town got locked down. Roommate, why? Robinson, why did I do it? Roommate, yeah. Robinson, I had enough of his hatred. Some hate can't be negotiated out. If I am able to grab my rifle unseen, I will have left no evidence.
FBI Director Kash Patel telling the Senate Judiciary Committee yesterday more people may be involved, and the agency is now tracing how and where political violence of this nature is first funded.
We follow the money. So we work with our partners at the Treasury Department to trace where the money came from, how these individuals paid for the training they received or the platforms they were using, and also how these individuals collectively got together in whatever groups they were on whatever social media sites they were on, to utilize clickbait to make money for their ideology.
But do you also believe that some of this may be coming from overseas?
Yes.
Unbelievable. That evidence is damning, Emily.
Oh, it sure is. And Kash Patel is asking the right questions. Look, we know young people are being radicalized somewhere, online, in school, in these groups. And we know campus groups have dark money coming in from overseas. We know George Soros has been funding some of the pro-Hamas groups. Look, we also need to call out the media here, the way the media is reporting Charlie Kirk's assassination. We saw ABC reporter yesterday call those text messages touching. The media is romanticizing a cold-blooded murderer and his transgender partner. Meanwhile, an ABC affiliate station in Illinois yesterday suspended one of their reporters who aired a nonpartisan tribute to Charlie Kirk. The media is glorifying the assassin while punishing those who are honoring the fallen.
That ABC reporter, there's no words.
It's disgusting.
Touching?
Touching.
Unbelievable.
It's like some sort of Netflix love story that they're trying to make it out to be.
Unbelievable.
Let's bring in Fox News contributor and host of the Guy Benson Show on Fox News Radio, Guy Benson, and the Big Weekend Show co-host and Outkick host, Tommy Lauren. It's great to see you both. Tommy, I want to start with you, and also congratulations on the Big Weekend Show. So happy for you on that. But I want to get your opinion on this. I actually don't think that some of these firings go far enough. I think if you're a surgeon or you're a doctor and you celebrate the assassination and the murder of another human being, you can't be trusted to hold the oath of your position. You can't be trusted with that position. I think you should lose your medical license. What do you think?
You know, Lisa, this is a difficult one because, as we just heard from the great Charlie Kirk, free speech was so important to him. It's so important to all of us, and a lot of us count ourselves free speech absolutists in a lot of ways. But if you are celebrating the assassination of a political thought leader or celebrating the murder or assassination of anyone, for that matter, you're not a victim of cancel culture. You were advertising your own indecency for the world to see, and your employer decided that you shouldn't be in a forward-facing role, that you shouldn't interact with the public, to your earlier point. But I also have to share something that Charlie Kirk told me maybe 8 or 9 years ago. He said, free speech isn't just saying what you want to say, it's also hearing what you don't want to hear. So while I agree that some of these individuals should certainly be punished and suspended, I think it's also important to see who among us is celebrating the assassination, who's celebrating murder and celebrating evil. We deserve to know who those people are, and they are showing themselves certainly on social media.
You know, Guy, I agree with Tommy. I'm a free speech absolutist. But there's a responsibility here. And to Lisa's point, you work for someone, you represent that employer in some way, and they have a right to say that you don't represent us properly. But I reject that it's cancel culture by conservatives. After all, we're not saying you are to be canceled. Employers are making a decision based on what these people have done. It's a self-inflicted wound, but the left now wants to use cancel culture because it's a catchphrase.
Well, the left loves cancel culture, and they've called it accountability culture. And they say free speech doesn't mean freedom from consequences. And the argument that a lot of us have made against cancel culture and the excesses of cancel culture, which have gotten insane over the last decade in particular, is they have taken things that are well within the mainstream that would have never gotten you fired in the past and turned them into litmus tests to get people thrown out of polite society, thrown out of their jobs, etc. The argument has never been that there should be no standards at all. It's just that, at least in my view, the bar of tolerance for speech should be set extremely high before we start punishing people for it. Not the government, that's the First Amendment, we can't do that. I'm talking about social consequences. The bar should be high. I think there are very few things that would fall into the category that we would say, if you say this publicly, you should lose your job. But one of those things, in my mind, a bright line that we should enforce, a guardrail in our society, is celebrating murder. Justifying and applauding and endorsing murder of political opponents. If that is not taboo in our society, then we will lose our society. So I think this is one of the most egregious things you can say, and therefore I agree it does not qualify in my mind as cancel culture or run amok cancel culture to see people losing their positions of employment, especially those who have positions of public trust, teachers, medical professionals, public officials, etc.
But it's also beyond public trust. It's an issue of safety. If you are a doctor and you're tasked with potentially saving someone's life, and you think that someone deserves to die or be assassinated because of his or her political beliefs, you can no longer be trusted in that position to administer the adequate care. So I think it's beyond a speech issue. It's a safety issue. But, Tommy, I want to get you on this as well. So Congresswoman Ilhan Omar has been slammed for her response to Charlie Kirk's assassination. And now some Republicans are ramping up pressure to strip her of her committee assignments. President Trump weighed in just moments ago. I want to get your take on the other side of this.
Ilhan Omar, after his assassination, called Charlie Kirk a reprehensible human being. Should she be stripped of her committee assignments?
I would say, I think she's a disgraceful person. I think she's a disgraceful person, a loser. It's amazing the way people vote. I know it's people from her area, maybe of the world. I don't know. They got here and they vote her in. It's hard to believe, but I think she's a disgusting person.
Tommy, I'm going to guess you're not going to disagree with him on some of those labels and, that he just assigned her. But what about the committee assignments?
Yeah, he's not wrong. Listen, I don't know if you should go so far as to punish someone with ripping their committee assignments. A lot of this is performative, of course, when it comes to Congress, and we've seen this many times. I would say what would be more powerful would be her constituents and those who voted for her, maybe them having a say. Maybe don't elect people who speak this way. Maybe don't elect people to represent you that hold these beliefs and say these things. I think that's far more effective than any form of cancel culture or stripping assignments or punishing somebody. If you are an elected official, your constituents should decide that they don't want to be represented by this. And I think it's also fair to mention this is far from the only thing that she said that most people would find reprehensible and repugnant.
But, Guy, in order for that to happen, and I agree with Tommy that it's up to her voters, which tells us something, by the way, about the people who vote for her. It's not just about what she says once in office if they keep putting her back. But then the opposition has to go in. And this presents an opportunity. Matter of fact, this entire disgusting situation we're in right now with Charlie Kirk presents an opportunity for conservatives to go out and make an argument in Ilhan Omar's district and in other districts like Jasmine Crockett's.
Making an argument on hostile territory is literally what Charlie Kirk specialized in and was so good at. And it was that exact setting in which he was murdered. I think Charlie, not to put words in his mouth, he said it repeatedly, he was such a believer in engaging people who disagree and bringing arguments to places where often dissenting voices are shut down or are too afraid to go. That is the essence of free speech and persuasion, which is what he did on a regular basis. So I think that point from you and from Tommy is right on point, as a matter of fact, and is honoring the legacy and the memory of Charlie Kirk.
Guy and Tommy, it's great to see you.
Thank you.
Always great to see you and hear your thoughts. We appreciate you. Thank you.
In terms of the agreement, the overall agreement itself, our Chinese counterparts have come with very aggressive asks. We will see if we can get there. At present, we are not willing to sacrifice our national security for a social media app.
Again, the Secretary is referring to our TikTok discussions. We have had general discussions as well about the trade situation. We have huge imbalances, persistent, massive trade imbalance with China. We've been consistent over many weeks and months about this issue. It's always helpful to talk to our colleagues. I don't think we found a path forward on that.
That was Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer detailing China trade talks in Madrid this week and the difficulties they saw over the TikTok deal. The president, of course, has been urging corporate America to move their supply chains to America so that the U.S. can be less reliant on communist China. U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer joins me right now. Ambassador, great to see you. Thank you so much for being here. We so appreciate your time and your work on all of this. Can you walk us through a bit about what was accomplished in this, was it the fourth meeting?
Yes, good to see you, Maria. Happy to talk to you about what happened at the meeting with the Chinese. We were in Madrid, Spain this time. And this meeting was really focused on TikTok. You'll know, of course, that the TikTok saga has gone on for a long time. Toward the end of his first term, President Trump set about to solve it. Over the course of the Biden administration, they grappled with this issue but could not solve it. But as of yesterday, we believe that President Trump has, in fact, resolved this issue, balancing the national security needs of the United States with the economic realities of having TikTok operating in the United States of America. And so the discussions were really focused on that. How do we get to a place where Chinese concerns are addressed and American national security priorities are taken care of? And that's what we achieved.
And of course, national security has been of the utmost importance for President Trump. He looks at all of these deals through a national security lens. So how can you balance this, continue to have this app in America, but not affect national security? Will the data of this app, the user's data, be going back to China?
It can't, right? So Congress, as you know, put forward a law and passed a law requiring that the national security concerns around TikTok be resolved, and if not, that TikTok goes dark in the United States of America. And of course, the Trump administration and the president himself were perfectly willing to let that happen, absent some kind of a deal that would resolve national security concerns, including the user data issue, which is of key importance. There is a deal out there between the private parties who are making the transaction, and it does account for this specific issue on U.S. user data, so it doesn't go back to Beijing.
And I know President Trump did that deal in terms of the U.S. owner a long time ago. He told me so in an interview earlier this year. Watch this.
Well, I'm not going to extend the pause. I don't think I'll need to because I could. There's no big deal. It's like TikTok. I'm extending that, but no big deal. We have a buyer for TikTok, by the way. I think I'll need probably China approval. And I think President Xi will probably do it. Who's buying? I'll tell you in about 2 weeks.
A big technology company there.
Very, very wealthy people. It's a group of very wealthy people.
So, Jameson, it was long expected that it would be Oracle. Is Oracle going to acquire the U.S. Assets of TikTok?
Well, I won't comment on the U.S. buyers. Just to give some background on this, there's a commercial deal between the commercial parties here, and our discussions in Madrid were really about how to achieve Chinese government approval of the commercial deal. So we'll let those parties disclose their shares and their identities at the right time.
Are there other issues that hit national security away from China having that data?
So listen, I think a lot of people in America have had concerns about TikTok for a long time. It's bipartisan. As I said, in the first Trump administration, we wrestled with this. The Biden people did as well. I think a lot of it has to do with that user data. So I think, we have that issue that we believe the commercial terms will address this. There are discussions about the intellectual property and the algorithm, which again are addressed in the commercial terms. And so we're comfortable that we're in a position where the national security concerns of the United States are in fact addressed.
All right, so I know this framework is still being talked about. You did it just before the deadline to divest the U.S. operations or face a ban. But I want to get your take on the broader trade issues. Does the TikTok situation fall in the middle of that? Because we're also waiting to see what happens with the international economic emergency and where that stands. I know you and the Treasury Secretary have said that you think the president will win this, right?
So yes, we do. We feel pretty strongly about the strength of the legal case. With respect to the TikTok matter, for months, the Vice President's office has been working very closely on this, and they've brought us to this point where we are working with the commercial parties, ensuring that national security is protected. The reason why it started to come into the trade lane a little bit is because the Chinese suggested that they were interested in trading something off with respect to trade or other things in return for their approval. That really, at the end of the day, is not what happened. As you've heard the Secretary discuss, they made a lot of aggressive asks on the trade front in connection with TikTok. Ultimately, we just focused it on the TikTok transaction. We focused it on the investment climate in the United States for Chinese companies. And those are the appropriate kind of things to discuss with the Chinese when you're talking about the TikTok investment. So we were able to keep all those other trade tariff issues really to the side.
Well, look, even if the IEEPA tariff trial goes against the president, you all have backups, right? I mean, I know that, the president issued that executive order last Friday modifying the scope of reciprocal tariffs and establishing procedures for implementing trade and security agreements. I'm wondering what the backup is, because you could also go to, Section 338, should the Supreme Court agree with the lower courts. You've got other implementation backup plans. Have those been discussed?
Well, Maria, if you look back to the first day of this administration, the president released an America First trade policy, and in that document, he went through a number of different measures, concerns, and different actions he could take. We believe that the IEEPA action and the reciprocal tariff action and the related sectoral tariffs under Section 232, we believe these are the best way to go. These are the ideal tools that really serve the needs of the country best in this emergency situation. If for some reason, those don't go forward, we'll continue executing the president's trade policy. The thing for everyone to know is that tariffs are going to be part of the policy landscape. They are now, they will be going forward, and we feel very strongly that we'll be successful at the Supreme Court.
That's what I figured, because the Section 338 proclamation could come over and carry the entire IEEPA tariff structure seamlessly, right? I mean, then you've also got the issue of Sections 301 and 232 when looking at steel, et cetera. So would you expect that the revenue that we've been seeing from tariffs is not going to be interrupted regardless of this?
Again, Maria, I think that we're very focused on winning the case right now. Obviously, we talk all the time about the best way to execute the president's trade policies. He has a lot of levers that have been delegated to him by Congress, and we'll do whatever is necessary. The IEEPA action, for sure, is the best way to do this. It gives the president the flexibility he needs. We're in an emergency situation. He's using that statute exactly how it's supposed to be used. He's modifying it as appropriate as we come to terms with countries to improve our trade balance with them. He is doing exactly what the law requires him to do with this.
What would a good trade deal with China look like, Ambassador? What do you want to hear when the president speaks to Xi Jinping on Friday?
I think that a good trade deal with China, it looks like something where trade is more balanced and where we're trading in goods that are, frankly, non-sensitive. Our economic relationship with China is so important. It's very large. We want to be able to trade with China, but we want to do it in a way that's healthy and good for our economy. And so that means that we need to have balance with them. We can't have all these huge amounts of imports flooding our country, being dumped onto our market, undermining our workers, undermining our manufacturers. We need to be able to export to them. We make a lot of agricultural goods, manufactured goods that should be very competitive in their markets. They keep them out unfairly. And so if we're going to have a good trade deal with China, it has to address those things. We have to have a more balanced relationship. They have to provide market access. And for many years, that's not what the Chinese have wanted. So it's not an easy thing to achieve, but those are the types of principles that we're looking for in any deal with the Chinese.
Of course, understood. And particularly as it relates to those magnets and rare earth minerals, do you have a confidence, Ambassador, that in fact the flow of those magnets and minerals is going to continue? And how do you walk this balance of sending China the chips that we make that they need, but not giving up on national security by giving them our best chips that we need for the military?
We agree 100%, Maria, with that approach in the Trump administration with respect to the rare earths. Frankly, most of our discussions over the past 4 or 5 months have been about securing that flow. And if you look at the Chinese export figures, you'll see that their exports of rare earths have bounced back up significantly since we've started these talks and created mechanisms and pathways to secure those types of magnets for American producers. And then on the other hand, we've maintained our export controls where appropriate. Everything is going to be a dance with the Chinese. What do we control? What do we send? What do we buy? What do we not? And we're in the process right now, and I think we will be over the next several months of figuring out where those lines are.
Understood. Ambassador, it's great to have you this morning. We so appreciate your leadership on all of this. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
All right, U.S. Trade Representative Ambassador Jamieson Greer at the White House. We'll be right back.
My colleagues and I remain squarely focused on achieving our dual mandate goals of maximum employment and stable prices for the benefit of the American people. While the unemployment rate remains low, it has edged up. Job gains have slowed, and downside risks to employment have risen. At the same time, inflation has risen recently and remains somewhat elevated. In support of our goals, and in light of the shift in the balance of risks, today the Federal Open Market Committee decided to lower our policy interest rate by a 1/4 percentage point. We also decided to continue to reduce our securities holdings. I'll have more to say about monetary policy after briefly reviewing economic developments.
A special guest join me now, Julia Montague. She's an American who married into British nobility, and she became the Countess of Sandwich. Okay, does this state visit, does it cement the American special relationship with the Brits?
Well, there's always been that special relationship, but I think last night really took it that step further. There was a lot of symbolism. So if you look at the after-dinner drinks in particular, there was the 1945 vintage port, which was tribute to, of course, Trump having been the 45th president. And then there was the 1912 cognac, which is the same year that his Scottish mother was born. So, and absolutely
nice
incredible.
Touch.
Absolutely.
Very nice touch. Okay, Lady Sandwich, listen to what Trump had to say about the honor of his historic second visit to the UK. Watch this.
It's a singular privilege to be the first American president welcomed here. And if you think about it, it's a lot of presidents, and this was the second state visit, and that's the first, and maybe that's going to be the last time. I hope it is, actually. But this is truly one of the highest honors of my life. Such respect for you and such respect for your country.
All this pageantry, it's used to sort of flatter President Trump. Is that because the Brits need President Trump?
Well, the Brits are just very good at pageantry, tradition, pomp and circumstance. And of course, President Trump,
Lady Sandwich,
now having
you're
met...
fighting me on this, aren't you?
President Trump having met now 2 monarchs. I mean, that's rather extraordinary, considering the late Queen Elizabeth II was the longest reigning monarch. Now he's been greeted by not only, of course, King Charles III, Queen Camilla, but the Prince and Princess of Wales. You know, they pulled out all the stops, absolutely.
Do you think it makes a difference to President Trump? I know he likes this, but does it influence him?
Well, absolutely it does. You know, this is, you know, his mother was Scottish born. He has said himself how much he, you know, really enjoys all the royalty, the pomp and circumstance. You saw him when he greeted, in particular, the Princess of Wales on arrival. I think he was quite surprised that he was being greeted by them. Wonderful, I think, show of of this pageantry and this pomp and circumstance, as I said earlier, that we know, but also, they really put in an extraordinary amount of effort to make sure that he felt welcomed.
Forgive me for asking a personal question, a historical question, but am I right? You are Lady Sandwich. Yes. Am I right in saying that your distant relatives, way back in the past, created and invented the sandwich?
You are correct. The 4th Earl of Sandwich, what we eat today is all because of him.
You haven't lost your American accent. Not entirely.
I haven't.
Not entirely.
Just a little bit there.
Do you feel you fit? This is an awful question to ask, but do you fit into British society?
I try to fit in as much as I can, but I also make sure that I keep my American roots. I celebrate Thanksgiving every year. My children always went to school with cupcakes for the 4th of July. They are rooted in American tradition just as much as they are rooted in British tradition over here as well.
I'm going to go back to you. Do you think that that Britain will embrace Trumpism?
I'm not sure about embracing Trumpism and this word. I think it's about embracing the special relationship, which they always have. And last night was a real celebration of that bridge between the two countries. And that was wonderful to see.
Okay, Lady Sandwich, thank you very much for joining us. Niall Gardner, same question. Do you think that the Brits will embrace Trumpism?
I think they are already, actually. And you're seeing the winds of change blowing across the UK. I think we're going to see a political revolution in Britain in the next 4 years. In fact, I spoke last night with Nigel Farage, who may well be the next British Prime Minister. And I do think that President Trump is an inspiration, of course, to those in Britain who want to see real political change here, who want to see secure borders, an end to mass migration, who want to see a return to a celebration as well of British heritage, history and culture. And at the moment, you've got a very left-wing government headed by Keir Starmer. The British people are reacting against Starmer. Starmer is the most unpopular Prime Minister of the modern era here in the United Kingdom. So I think that we are going to see a political revolution in the UK, a Trump-style revolution, yes.
Would you go that far, Lady Sandwich? A political revolution?
I'm not the politician here. I'm going to leave it over to Niall. I just like all the pomp and circumstance and, of course, the gold dress that the Princess of Wales is wearing and the tiara. And again, solidifying that special relationship, I think, is the most important.
Nigel Farage was on the show yesterday, on this program, sitting right there. He said that all over Britain, suddenly, the Union Jack was beginning to appear. Have you seen that?
I think that, the Union Jack, for me, I've always seemed to notice it. Maybe not, it's not as pronounced as, of course, in America. When I go back to America, it's wonderful to see the American flag out so many homes. It's everywhere. But little by little, I've noticed, yes, definitely the Union Jack is being flown more.
I'm sorry to put you on the spot, Lady Sandwich, but I did. And I hope you'll come back again at some point when you come to New York.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Joining me is my dear friend and mentor, Newt Gingrich, former Speaker of the House and a Fox News contributor. Newt, welcome back. You can talk about anything, but it's mostly about this tragic, awful shooting. And let me just, Newt, I don't see, I read your article. Charlie Kirk's assassination teaches that evil will flourish unless it is confronted and defeated. Of course, I agree with that. Newt, I don't know how you do it without faith. I do not know how you do it without faith. I don't know how you do it without a moral code that clearly distinguishes between good and evil. I'll be honest with you. Faith, to me, is right at the center of this awful story. The fight against faith, if you will. I'm just saying, that's my take. What's yours?
Well, I couldn't agree with you more. When the French Enlightenment mutated into an anti-Christian movement and secularism in the French Revolution began to literally try to replace Western civilization, including, for example, replacing the months with revolutionary names, killing thousands of people with the guillotine. From that point on, there has been a constant drive among Western elites that's anti-religious, that basically seeks to center the world on human beings. So it's exactly what God was talking about when it said you should have no other God before you. If you think you can change who you are sexually, if you think that your appetites, your interests, your desires are at the center of life that you get to define, you're going down a path where there's a vacuum, where there should be an active religious soul. That vacuum very often gets filled with drugs. I mean, the fact that we could lose 100,000 young people a year and not have a national crisis tells you that in a faith-based society where every soul matters, we would be in a frenzy to destroy the drug trade, including in China, where a large part of it comes from, including in Mexico, but also including in the United States. And we'd be serious about it. But somehow we're told, oh, well, you know, recreational drugs are funny. Hollywood makes movies about it. It's really okay. Then you get into sexual identity politics. All of these things create a period of instability in which there's nothing to grab. The power of faith is that you know that you are less than God. You know that you only have salvation through faith, and you know that it's okay to live in a world where you're not going to be perfect, but you can find salvation anyway. You take all that away, and it becomes a nightmare and a jungle.
Yes, afraid I agree with that. It's just, it becomes a barren, violent nightmare. You're exactly right. You know, the other thing, Newt, people may not have agreed with everything that Charlie Kirk stood for, okay? I understand that. But one thing's for sure, he was for free speech. His whole idea of dialoguing on college campuses and doing it in a civil manner. He was for free speech. He was also for free markets, okay? Now, how you go from free speech and free markets to fascism or Hitlerism, which are violence-tinged words, is beyond me. I do not understand this. And I think that is an issue that, you know, folks who use those terms should be called on, because that leads right down the road to the barren existence that you described a moment ago.
Sure. I mean, if you go back and look at the collapse of Weimar Germany, it was partly because the communists and socialists on one side, the Nazis on the other side, all used language that was a language of hate and a language of absolute victory. One side or the other had to win. And therefore, whatever you had to do for your side to win was fine. Well, part of what you're seeing today is that there was an establishment on the left that was amazingly powerful, had been amazingly successful for a long time. And that establishment wanted to change America into a very different place. Ironically, this being Constitution Week, celebrating the Constitution, these people are all basically against the Constitution, because the Constitution is a limited, balanced document recognizing that human beings are weak, and the human beings left to themselves will lead to dictatorship, to exploitation, and therefore we need rules, we need structure. And the fact that we went through this cycle now for really almost 50 years, starting in the 60s, where we basically allowed people to try on their own to invent civilization, not have to learn anything about historic rules, not having to learn the Ten Commandments, not having to learn that there is a larger order and that God is a key part of that larger order. Well, you end up where you are. You have people out there who are, for all practical purposes, crazy, and you have people out there who, in their loneliness and their craziness, listen to the guy who stabbed to death the Ukrainian woman in Charlotte, who's now saying that there was something inside him, that he had been taken over. This is madness.
I still think, as bleak as things are right now, I still think this is the greatest country in the world. It's a democracy. And I think I'm going to be optimistic about this. I think bells have been rung. I think a lot of people are looking at this. We'll talk some more about it, you and I, and we'll talk about it in the show. But I'm going to take the optimistic point of view. I think faith is going to triumph. You know, when crucibles come, faith is always there to help. I think that's going to happen again. So anyway, Newt Gingrich, you and I will talk. Thanks for helping us out today.
With you.
You bet.
Sources say that King Charles is, quote, very involved with President Trump and First Lady Melania's state visit. According to Vanity Fair, there are, quote, a number of issues he's eager to discuss with Trump. Neil Sean with me now. He's a royal watcher. Neil, Charles should not be involved in politics.
Absolutely.
He's not supposed to be, but he's going to be, isn't he? On climate, he will do it.
Of course. I mean, spot on, because the problem that you have with the Queen, we knew nothing. You know, we didn't know any of those conversations. The problem that you've got, as you know, with the Prince as he was, the Prince of Wales, he's had years to develop his thoughts. We've seen the letters, we've seen his thoughts on architecture and all sorts of things. So consequently, people are assuming he will bring this in. The true version of events that I've been told is he doesn't want to ruffle any feathers, and he certainly doesn't want a repetition of what happened when President Trump sat down with Keir Starmer and the Sadiq Khan moment came up, right? And so he doesn't want any of that. So I would imagine that would be behind closed doors. That depends if President Trump brings that out. But I wouldn't assume he wouldn't, in fact.
I would imagine President Trump will have something to say, even if it's in private.
We love him.
I think he'll push him.
Yeah.
What do you say? Wait a minute. What do you say? We love him?
The Brits love President Trump. Don't, you know, whatever people say, when he spoke for us about that incident, you know, with the Mayor of London and all of that, yes, it might have been choice language, but actually that was very well received. And the fact that he's brought so much business into London, the hotels are full, people are interested, it's a buzzing place. You know, the Mayor of London should be very grateful to the President for bringing all of this business, all of Fox, all of these things over here. It's good for business.
Now, there is an anti-Trump demonstration going on. It's right behind us, actually, in central London. But the way it looks to me at the moment is that the protests against President Trump have been more muted than they were in the first time around, the first state visit.
I think that's really because, you know, when you remember the first time around, President Trump was finding his feet. He's definitely a different president this time around. I think it's a lot more collective, more together. And also, when you look at the people, you've got to remember that this is midweek. People are not available, say, at the weekend. There's not really that much interest in this march. It is quite flatlining, do you know what I mean?
Okay. Now, Kate Middleton, she's expected to play, again, quoting now, a pivotal role in the state visit. Do you think this is a turning point for the Princess of Wales?
What we're really seeing, Stuart, is very clever, this. You know, as you know, the King got a health issue. And what we're seeing is Catherine and William taking on more responsibility. And this really is almost training in front of the world stage. This is what you will be doing in the future. Catherine, everybody wants to meet her, the Princess of Wales. She's the one that can sell out magazines. She's the one that the public are interested in. Catherine and Melania together is huge box office. And I would think that, yeah, exactly, a beautiful lady, the First Lady. And I think that that's going to work very well for both of them. And I think that will cement our relationship even further. You can always rely on the girls.
But the world seems fascinated by British royalty. It's always amazing to me.
No,
but you made a living out of it.
Yeah, but then again, you know, I suppose. But, you know, I'm as intrigued as most people, because when you look at the soldiers and everything that's gone through, you know, the army, all that pomp and circumstance is wonderful. And where else do you get that? You know, if I was the president and you're going down in that carriage procession, wow, all this for me is brilliant. And, you know, that's part of history. Not many people get to that part of history.
He likes it.
I loved it. I would love it, yeah.
Our president, my president, I'm an American.
Yeah.
He loves this.
Yeah.
Laps it up.
Of course he does. But, you know, what we have to be grateful for is, against all the politicians around the world who fall out, whether it be, you know, Ukraine's, all that sort of stuff, the royal family can unite this. This is what they're good at. And ultimately, they are sort of a company, a firm, whatever you want to call them, that don't get political, but then can put on a world, you know, performance like this. And suddenly people go, you know what, this is good. This is Great Britain. Maybe we should be doing business with them. And President Trump receiving that, and the state dinner tonight is going to be magnificent, let me tell you. I've seen on the inside what's going on in there. Wonderful.
I need a Prince Harry update.
Oh,
I know that he got together with his father, King Charles. First time in 19 months they got together.
Yeah.
But he still seems estranged from William and Kate.
The only story, really, that people have not picked up on is he needed permission from the King to go to Ukraine. The British government had given him permission. He needed the King's permission. Hence the reason there was a small, you know, window of opportunity.
That's it? Just permission to go to Ukraine?
Yeah, and everybody's spinning the story as if it's reconciliation. Harry did the interview with the tabloid, as you know, saying, next year it's about the focus on my father. How about focusing on maybe Meghan's father?
OK. Is Meghan still unpopular in Britain?
Well, you've been here now. What do you think?
I I've not done a survey of British people on the media.
The trouble is, honestly, Stuart, you know, they have wonderful windows of opportunity and they seem to blow it. You know, that visit with Harry this week in London, last week, sorry, in London, went very well. Then he goes over and does the interview and blows all the good work that everybody's done. Meghan Markle is not popular simply because at this point she threw all of what you've seen away at Windsor today to Hawk Wine on Instagram.
Neil Sean, you're much in demand for the next few days, and thank you for being with us this
A real pleasure to see you in the flesh, Stuart.
Thank you.
Welcome back. Good Tuesday morning, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us this morning. I'm Maria Bartiromo, and it is Tuesday, September 16th. It is 7:01 on the East Coast. Coming up this hour at 7:10, our Word on Wall Street panel is here with Gina Bolvin and Gregory Farinello looking at major highs in stocks. At 7:20, Senator Bill Hagerty will join us on Memphis, Tennessee. And at 7:30, U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer is here on the China Talks. But first, there's this. Americans are finding themselves fired and out of work for their social media posts celebrating the assassination of Charlie Kirk. At least a dozen faculty and staff from schools facing swift termination, including 2 at a Tennessee university. One faculty member allegedly wrote, "You reap what you sow," while another wrote, "This is not a tragedy, it's a victory." Sick. Clemson University says 2 professors have been removed from their teaching duties pending an investigation. And officials in Texas say 100 teachers and staffers were terminated for similar comments. Joining me now is South Carolina Congresswoman Nancy Mace. Congresswoman, thanks very much for being here. This is absolutely outrageous. I know you're urging the Department of Education to cut off federal funding to any schools or faculty that appear to be spewing hate like this and celebrating this assassination. Tell us more.
Well, right. I mean, we should not allow these educators who are celebrating the political assassination of Charlie Kirk and conservatives around the country. They should not be anywhere near our kids or teaching them. The same thing goes for healthcare professionals, doctors, anesthesiologists, nurses. I don't want these people making life or death healthcare decisions for myself, my family, or any of you that are watching you, Maria, this morning. And in fact, late last night, we got tipped off about an alleged employee at a South Carolina college saying that violence is the only answer and saying that I would be the next political assassination. These people need to be publicly shamed. They need to be shamed out of a civil society, out of their jobs when they are around children or making healthcare decisions. Enough is enough. This is the mentality that got Charlie Kirk assassinated. It's why Donald Trump they attempted to kill him twice last year. It's why so many conservatives are getting death threats all day, all night right now, and we're done with it.
Yeah, but I want to know who is supporting this and funding this. I mean, you've got to follow the money. President Trump now wants to see racketeering charges against leftist groups who are agitators. Watch this.
I've asked Pam to look into that in terms of RICO, bringing RICO cases against it, criminal RICO, because they should be put in jail. What they're doing to this country is really subversive.
I mean, the president said he's going to look at the Soros network. I know you plan to file a resolution stripping Minnesota Congresswoman Ilhan Omar of her committee assignments following her disparaging comments about Charlie Kirk. So let me kick it off, this whole look at this with that. Who is funding this radicalization?
Well, I agree with President Donald Trump. The first person we should look at is George Soros. We know that he has sent a lot of money, millions of dollars, funding organizations that want chaos, division, and violence. I mean, when there were the Black Lives Matter riots, if you remember, Maria, there were pallets of bricks that were sent to small towns all across the country to destroy these cities and these towns. So somebody is paying for this. And we know it's coming out of the Democrat the left-wing party in the United States. We know that they are participating in this, but somebody is funding it. And I agree with Trump to start with Soros. And I am filing a privileged motion this morning to censure Ilhan Omar for alleging that Charlie Kirk is a terrorist in her content and all but blaming him for his assassination, but also strip her of her committee assignments. I believe in the First Amendment. You have the right to say whatever you want, but that has consequences, and she should be admonished, and she should be reprimanded here in Congress. This is the sort of thing that is putting conservatives' lives in danger. I carry my 6-hour P365 now everywhere I go because of the danger and the threats that we're currently facing.
Yeah, I mean,
in the wake of Charlie Kirk's murder.
I mean, there's a whole group of Democrats who used the word fascist repeatedly during their campaigning, their political campaigning. And, you know, the suspect had the word fascist etched on his ammunition. So what does that tell you?
Well, you mean, look at Kamala Harris when she was running for president last year. She admitted, she said live on air multiple times over that Donald Trump was a fascist. And this ideology, they've called us Nazis, they've called us Hitler, they've called us fascists, they've called us terrorists. This is why our lives are in danger. And how do you have unity with a group of people who want to murder you? And, you know, I talked to my pastor on Sunday. I'm struggling with this because these people need to be held accountable. They need to be fired from their jobs. They need to go to jail if they've committed a crime. And, you know, how do you handle that? And so that's the question we're all asking ourselves. And we want to be safe in our communities. But also, if you've done this guy right here, this sounds like he was organized. I know that Kash Patel said that they were talking to many people on Discord. It was definitely premeditated. But this ideology, and he comes from this community because his boyfriend, I guess, is transgender or transitioning. But they come from this community that is advocating for violence. And I've had so many threats. And in fact, at my first Turning Point USA event earlier this year, there was a transgender person who tried to pick up a potted plant, a fern, and throw it at me. But this is a community that just because I say as a rape survivor, as a rape victim, I don't want a biological man in the shower next to me or the bathroom, they want to kill me because of my beliefs as a woman and as a rape survivor. So we're not dealing with sane people here, and they need to be dealt with boldly, strongly. And I support everything Trump is saying and wanting to do. That's why I'm filing this censorship and this motion to strip Ilhan Omar of her committee assignments. That's why I'm working to root out the teachers and healthcare workers in South Carolina who celebrate murder. I don't want them around our kids. Hard pass.
I've never seen the kind of hate that was so apparent during the last election season. I've never seen the kind of hate that was exhibited against Donald Trump and his supporters than what we've seen in the last 10 years.